There's a brutal truth most adults try their best to avoid. You don't have a money problem. You have a you problem. If someone tracked every financial decision you made over the past 12 months, every swipe, every debt, every missed investment opportunity, there's a good chance they'd come to a painful conclusion. You've been accidentally behaving like an idiot with your money. Not because you're uneducated, not because you don't earn enough, not because you're a bad person, but because you've been programmed to make poor financial choices without even noticing. You reward yourself after a tiring week, then wonder why your account is empty. You upgrade your lifestyle before upgrading your finances. You borrow from your future just to buy temporary comfort in the present. You think investing is risky, but fail to see that staying broke forever is the biggest risk of all. Duncan Bannatyne puts it bluntly: most people aren't poor because of circumstances. They're poor because of habits. If you truly want to change your life, you don't need a new job. You don't need another side hustle. You don't need some overnight wealth hack. You need to do something much harder. Stop acting like the old version of yourself, the one who created every financial problem you're struggling with today. The book, How to Be Smart with Your Money, doesn't just give advice. It exposes the uncomfortable truths about how you use your money and shows you how to escape the trap you've unknowingly built for yourself. Part 1. Changing your mindset about money. Duncan Bannatyne often says that financial change doesn't start in your wallet, it starts in your mind. He believes that most of us aren't poor because we earn too little, but because we're carrying around an outdated mindset, a collection of false beliefs we've absorbed over the years without ever realizing it. It's like wearing sunglasses but blaming the world for being too dark, when the problem is the very thing covering your eyes. He once met a middle-aged man with a decent salary, a stable family, and yet he always felt like he never had enough. When Duncan asked him what he was liking, the man paused and finally said, "Money. I'm always short on money." Duncan didn't argue. He simply asked, "So what do you prioritize?" That seemingly simple question made the man hesitate, because the truth was he didn't prioritize anything. Everything was important, and therefore nothing was important enough to protect. That was the moment Duncan realized people aren't poor because they lack money. They're poor because they don't know what truly matters to them. To Duncan, a faulty mindset that leads to poverty is like an addiction no one wants to call by its name. People buy things they don't need to forget a life they aren't happy with. They swipe their cards to feel like they're living better, when in reality, they're digging deeper into a hole they created themselves. Worse, they deceive themselves with phrases like, "I deserve this," as if a moment of emotional comfort could make up for the financial future they're sacrificing. Duncan believes the worst moment in a person's life isn't when they're broke. It's when they tell themselves, "I'll change when I make more money," because that is the sweetest lie anyone will ever swallow. He insists that someone who can't manage $500 will never manage $5,000 or anything beyond that. Money doesn't change who you are, it magnifies your true habits. A spender will spend even more. A fearful person will become even more afraid. Someone who lacks priorities will become even more chaotic. Then Duncan tells his own story. A young man who left school early, no degree, no assets, worked every odd job he could find. He didn't become successful because he was naturally good with money. He only got one thing right from the beginning: the willingness to admit he didn't know. That humility opened the door for him to learn, little by little, about spending, saving, investing, and financial discipline. No magic, no dramatic overnight comeback. Just an ordinary person willing to confront his own flawed thinking. According to Duncan, a new mindset must begin with a hard truth. All of us have, at some point, made ourselves poor. Not intentionally, but unknowingly. And the starting point of financial freedom is the moment you're brave enough to say, I can relearn, I can do things differently. When your mindset changes, your actions change. When your actions change, your results change. And when your results change, you begin becoming a richer version of yourself, from the inside out. Part 2. Creating a personal financial plan. Duncan Bannatyne once said, "No one gets lost on a path they've drawn themselves." And strangely enough, while Americans can spend weeks planning a vacation, months choosing a new car, and even years preparing for a wedding, very few can spare a single afternoon to plan their entire financial lives. He once met a young couple in Austin, combined income over $120,000 a year. They weren't poor, but they always felt like they were chasing something they could never quite catch. When Duncan asked if they had ever written out a financial plan, they replied, "We have some ideas in our heads, but we've never actually put them on paper." Duncan just smiled, because he knew that was the classic opening line to every chaotic financial journey. To Duncan, a personal financial plan isn't a dry spreadsheet full of numbers. It's a roadmap, a compass in an age where people are pulled in every direction by advertising, instant gratification, and social pressure. Without a map, people drift, and most don't realize they're drifting until it's too late. He often explains it with a simple example. If you're standing in an airport without knowing your destination, every gate is meaningless. Money works the same way. If you don't know how you want to live, how you want to retire, or how protected you want your family to be, then every spending decision becomes a reaction, not a conscious choice. In the book, he urges everyone to start with a question that sounds easy but leaves many Americans confused. What truly matters to you? Not surface answers like, I want to be rich or I want stability, but specifics so clear they can't be misunderstood. A home that doesn't need to be luxurious but feels safe for your children. A savings buffer so you don't panic when the car breaks down or your boss cuts your hours. A small, steady investment habit so you won't depend on anyone 20 years from now. Once, Duncan told the story of a woman who spent 60% of her income on things she couldn't even remember buying. When he asked her to write down the values she wanted to prioritize, family, health, education, financial safety, everything began to shift. Suddenly, her money started moving with intention. She didn't have to downgrade her life, she only had to reorder it according to what mattered most. Duncan believes financial planning is the art of bringing your life back into focus. It's like adjusting the lens on a camera. The world was always clear, you just hadn't focused it properly. He also emphasizes that a good plan isn't fixed, it's alive. It evolves as life evolves when you change careers, get married, have children, or face unexpected challenges. But one thing never changes. You must have a plan, starting today. And to test whether your plan actually works, Duncan always asks one blunt question. If you lost your job tomorrow, would you panic? If your answer is yes, he says, then you don't have a plan. You're just coping. The truth is, financial planning isn't designed to make you rich quickly. It's designed to help you stop living in fear, to stop flinching every time a new bill arrives, to stop feeling guilty every time you buy something for yourself, to stop running a pointless race and start choosing the life you want. To Duncan, a financial plan is a declaration. I run my life, not my circumstances, not my emotions, not the crowd. Me. Part 3. Conscious Spending, the Foundation of Wealth. Duncan Bannatyne has always believed something that sounds almost too simple, almost silly. Wealth doesn't begin with earning money. It begins with how you spend it. But he doesn't say this to encourage people to be stingy or tighten their belts. On the contrary, he believes conscious spending is one of the most liberating actions a person can take. He remembers a woman in Chicago he once coached. Her income wasn't bad, around $78,000 a year, a number most people would consider pretty good. Yet every single month, she ended up in the red. Not because she bought designer items, traveled extravagantly, or spent recklessly, but because she had no idea where her money went. When Duncan asked, "What did you buy last week?" she hesitated. I think coffee, lunches, a few random things." She couldn't remember. And Duncan told her, if you can't remember where your money went, don't be surprised when it leaves you faster than you want. He calls these moments tiny financial deaths repeated every day. No one becomes poor because of a latte. They become poor because of a habit, living unconsciously. They don't make choices, they simply react. To Duncan, conscious spending isn't about removing joy from your life. It's about asking one question before your money leaves your wallet. Does this actually make my life better? When the answer is yes, spend without guilt. When the answer is no, let the money stay with you, because if you don't protect it, there will always be someone ready to take it. Duncan often shares a story about himself. When he was young, he used to buy things whenever he felt bored. A shirt he didn't need, an overpriced meal, a gadget he never used. It wasn't until he realized he was using money to patch emotional emptiness that he created a new rule. Only buy something if I truly want it, not if I just want to feel better. That rule later became the backbone of his financial life and the foundation of the multi-million-dollar empire he built. Duncan also points out that in America, spending pressure doesn't come from need, but from comparison. People see their neighbors buy a new car and think they need one too. They see friends posting at fancy restaurants and feel like they're falling behind. But he says, if you try to live like everyone else, you'll end up like everyone else, broke and anxious. Conscious spending is the first step in stepping out of that pointless comparison game. To Duncan, wealth isn't about having a lot of money. Wealth is knowing where your money is going. It's the relief you feel when you check your account and know every dollar has a purpose. It's when you stop letting money control your emotions and start letting reason control your money. And perhaps the most important thing Duncan wants people to understand: conscious spending isn't about spending less. It's about spending better. Spend on what makes you better, stronger, happier. Spend intentionally, not impulsively. Spend in service of the future you want, not to satisfy a temporary moment in the present. And when you start living that way, something remarkable happens. You don't just have more money, you have more choices. And choices, Duncan says, are the only form of wealth that truly matters. Part 4. Saving and Building a Safety Fund. Duncan Bannatyne often says that money never simply disappears. It quietly walks away from the people who don't know how to make it stay. And if there's one secret the wealthy rarely speak out loud, it's this: they aren't rich because they earn a lot. They're rich because they keep enough for their money to start working for them. He shares that there were years in his life when a single unexpected bill, a car repair, an illness, or some foolish expense was enough to turn everything upside down. From that constant feeling of being dragged around by money, he learned his first lesson about financial freedom. Without safety, there is no peace, and without peace, you cannot build wealth. A safety fund, according to Duncan, isn't extra money, it's a shield. The protection that keeps you from going into debt, from panicking, and from making stupid financial decisions out of fear. He started with an amount so small it was almost laughable: £1 a day. It didn't change his life financially, but it changed his habit. Every coin he put into his fund was a quiet reminder: I'm building freedom for myself. From £1 a day, he increased to 5, then 10, then 20. Not because he suddenly became richer, but because he reached a new level of mindset. Saving wasn't a sacrifice, it was an investment in future peace. He divided the safety fund into 2 parts. The survival fund, for 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, enough to keep you from panicking when everything collapses. And the opportunity fund, for those rare moments when the market dips, a business opens up, or luck knocks on the door. Most people fear risk, but the wealthy wait for opportunity. And opportunity only favors those who have money ready. Duncan emphasizes that once you build a real safety fund, you will notice something strange. You start making decisions with logic instead of fear. You no longer work because you need the money. You work because you want to go further. Saving won't make you a millionaire overnight, but without it, you will always stay at the starting line. Only with a stable foundation can you move on to the next chapter, making your money earn money. Part 5. Smart Investing and Risk Management. Duncan Bannatyne says that investing isn't a game of chasing hot picks, nor is it a lucky leap meant to change your life overnight. If anything comes close to blind investing, it was the way he once poured money into a series of projects he didn't even understand. The result? He lost money faster than he earned it. Those failures taught him a truth most beginners overlook. Money only grows when you truly understand where you're placing it. He recalls thinking early on that good investors were the ones who dared to take big risks. But when he looked back at the most successful deals of his life, he realized they all had one thing in common: not boldness, but clarity. Clarity about the business model, clarity about the market, clarity about the risks, clarity about his own capabilities. That's when Duncan established his unbreakable rule. Only invest in something you can explain simply. If you can't explain it to a 12-year-old, you don't understand it well enough to put your money in. He divides investments into 3 categories. 1. Cash flow investments, small businesses, rental real estate, dividend-paying stocks. 2. Growth investments, long-term stocks, index funds, and models with real intrinsic value. 3. Opportunity investments, higher risk but potentially high return if you know exactly what you're doing. And of course, all of this comes with the part most people hate but is actually the most important skill: risk management. Duncan follows one guiding principle: never let a single investment have the power to drag you back to zero. No borrowing high-interest money to invest. No all in because of excitement. No putting money into anything just because someone says it's a sure win. He puts it bluntly: the rich don't avoid risk. They manage risk so that risk works for them. The poor do the opposite, avoiding risk, fearing losses, and letting opportunities slip through their fingers. Smart investing, according to Duncan, isn't about predicting the market like a genius. It's about choosing games you understand, controlling how much you can lose, and letting time do the heavy lifting. When you know what you're doing, investing stops being scary. It becomes a solid staircase that lifts you out of the constant anxiety about money, leading you towards the place where money finally begins working for you. Part 6. Business: the path to creating real wealth. Duncan Bannatyne has a statement that annoys many people, yet it's completely true. No one becomes sustainably wealthy by saving or passive investing alone. Real wealth is created through business. He doesn't say this to discredit saving or investing. He says it because he lived it, going from a young man leaving the military with only a few pounds in his pocket to owning an empire of gyms, spas, hotels, healthcare services, and multiple televised deals. None of it began with a billion-dollar idea. but with a small, simple business model that produced real cash flow. Duncan believes business isn't a privilege for the smart. It's the reward for those willing to step forward. Business starts with a problem, not genius. Duncan shares that his first successful business was so simple few believed it could make real money. An elderly care service. Not sexy, not trendy, not high-tech, but it solved a real need for real people willing to pay real money. From that, he learned the best opportunities aren't in wow ideas. They're in simple problems everyone assumes someone else will solve. If you want to build wealth, find the thing that makes customers say, "I wish someone would do this for me." The wealthy don't hunt for opportunities like treasure. They look for people's inconveniences and turn them into income. You don't need innate talent, you need discipline and courage. Duncan isn't a math genius. He isn't a master of complex finance, but he possesses one thing: the ability to make decisions while others are still thinking. He emphasizes that the biggest difference between those who truly become wealthy and those who stay stuck isn't knowledge, it's speed of action. Most people wait for perfection. Entrepreneurs start with imperfection and refine through real feedback from the market. He famously said, "I don't try to perfect a product before selling it. I sell first, then perfect it later." Because business does not reward the best prepared. It rewards the earliest on the field. Real wealth comes from systems, not your own effort. Duncan didn't grow his businesses by working more. He grew them by building systems that didn't require him to show up every day. He hired people, he empowered them, he built processes. And most importantly, he constantly asked, "If I disappear for a month, will the business still make money?" When the answer becomes yes, that's when a small business turns into a real asset. To Duncan, business isn't creating a new job for yourself. It's creating a money machine, one that operates while you sleep, rest, or build your next venture. The biggest risk in business isn't losing money. It's not trying. Duncan has failed many times. Some ventures lost money from the first month. Some had to be sold quickly to cut losses. Some looked like life-changing opportunities but went nowhere. But every fall left him with a stronger weapon, real experience, the kind no book can teach. He says people fear the risks of business, yet they don't fear something even more dangerous: spending 30 years in a job they hate and ending up with no assets producing passive income. Business is risky, but not starting a business is far riskier. Business doesn't guarantee wealth, but it's the only path that makes it possible. That's why he insists, if you truly want to create wealth, create value. And the greatest way to create value is through business. If investing grows your money, business grows your life. Part 7. Relationships, family, and your financial life. Duncan Bannatyne often emphasizes that wealth isn't just measured by what sits in your bank account. It's measured by how well you manage the most important relationships in your life. Business can make you rich, and investing can grow your money, but family and the connections around you determine whether you're truly happy. And in many cases, they determine the stability or the collapse of your finances. Money can bring two people closer or push them apart. Duncan has witnessed countless entrepreneurs who were successful in public but broken in private. They built companies but lost their families. They accumulated wealth but became lonelier than ever. He says money doesn't destroy relationships, it magnifies what's already there. If you and your loved ones already lack communication, money will widen that gap. If you respect each other, money becomes a tool that supports growth and shared goals. That's why Duncan treats financial communication as a foundation of marriage and family, not a private matter for one person. Your family is your first financial team. Duncan says that before you build a company, you must build your team at home, your partner, your children, and those who live with you. Family is not the group that spends your money. Family is your financial team. A small decision, like monthly spending habits, can directly shape your long-term goals. Buying a home, getting out of debt, building an emergency fund, starting a business, investing for the future. He recounts that many businesses fail not because of weak models, but because the founder couldn't maintain stability at home. Stress inside the house drains your mental strength, breaks your focus, and cripples your consistency in business. Put simply, strong family equals strong business. Unstable family, you can say goodbye to any financial strategy. You teach your children about money even when you don't say a word. Duncan believes children do not learn about money from school. They learn about money from the adults they watch every day. When you overspend, they see it as normal. When you fear money, they absorb that fear. When you let debt take over your life, they assume that's just part of adulthood. But when you spend responsibly, save consistently, invest for the long term, talk openly about finances, you plant the seeds of a healthy, wealthy mindset in them. Duncan once said, "A financial legacy isn't just the money you leave behind, it's the knowledge about money you leave behind." A child who understands money starts life on a completely different starting line. Being wealthy with no one to share it with, that's not wealth. What makes people respect Duncan isn't just his net worth, it's his philosophy. Success means nothing if you have no one to walk with you. Despite building companies, signing big deals, and appearing on television, he always returns to family as his charging station, the place that keeps him grounded in a world full of financial pressure. He warns that many people spend 20 years chasing money, then spend the next 20 trying to win back the family they lost. And often, they can't. Real connection is a type of asset no market can price, yet it can elevate your life or collapse your entire financial foundation. Healthy finances are built on healthy relationships. Duncan concludes this philosophy with a line that sounds simple, yet guides his entire life. He said, "I want to succeed, but not alone, because wealth isn't just about how much you earn. It's about how much you keep and who you keep beside you along the way." If you want to go far in your career and finances, start with the place closest to you, the people you love. Money matters, but relationships determine how far you can go and who will walk that journey with you. Part 8. Financial Freedom and Living by Your Own Standards. Duncan Bannatyne has always believed that financial freedom isn't a milestone, a number, or a net worth someone else decides for you. Financial freedom, in its purest form, is the ability to live by your own standards, not the standards of society, your friends, or people showing off online. Most of us lose our freedom not because we lack money, but because we get pulled into borrowed standards, driving the car others expect, buying the house others admire, and spending in ways that make us look wealthy rather than truly feel fulfilled. Freedom begins the moment you stop running a race with no finish line. Duncan says modern life is like a racetrack where everyone is sprinting simply because they see others sprinting, even though no one knows where the finish line is. You work hard, upgrade your lifestyle, then work even harder to maintain that upgrade, until one day you realize you've never actually lived the life you wanted. To Duncan, financial freedom isn't quitting your job, it's having the power to choose. Choosing to work because you want to, not because you must. Choosing a lifestyle that aligns with your real values. Choosing how to spend your time without money dictating every decision. It's a quiet kind of wealth, and an incredibly durable one. Living by your own standards means defining what enough means to you. No one has the right to decide how much you should spend, what you should own, or what success should look like, especially people who don't live your life. Duncan encourages everyone to design their ideal life by asking a few simple but powerful questions. What kind of life brings me peace? Who and what do I want to spend my time on? Which expenses actually bring value to my life? If I stopped comparing myself to others, would I choose a different life? Many people become wealthy only to realize they built a life based on other people's expectations. Duncan wants you to avoid that mistake from the start. Financial freedom isn't about money. It's about autonomy. The interesting thing is that Duncan never insists you should become a millionaire. He simply insists you should be the one in control of your life. You can live simply and still be deeply happy. You can earn less than others and still be far freer than they are. You can choose a quiet, modest path that aligns with your core values and still win. When you live by your own standards, money becomes a tool, not a measurement of your worth. And that kind of peace is something even the wealthiest people don't always have. Financial freedom is the ending, but also the beginning of a real life. Duncan believes that once you reach financial freedom, you don't just escape money worries. You escape the pressure to prove yourself. You escape the invisible expectations that push you around. You stop living a life that was pre-programmed for you. From that moment on, you can work, love, create, and contribute in ways that align with who you truly are. And that, he says, is the most beautiful wealth. If your entire financial journey leads you to one thing, Duncan hopes it's this: freedom. The freedom to choose, the freedom to live honestly, and the freedom to never need permission to live the life you want. If you want to dive deeper into every strategy Duncan Bannatyne shares, from changing your mindset, managing spending, building an emergency fund, to investing, running a business, and achieving true financial freedom, check out How to Be Smart with Your Money in the description below. Start applying the principles that help Duncan go from a young man drowning in debt to a successful entrepreneur with real financial freedom.